Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to sub-regional webinar, Enhancing the Implementation of GPP in the Southeast Asian region, supported by the EU Switch Asia, implemented by UNEP in cooperation with APRCP. The objective of this webinar is to share the results of the survey and discuss how to enhance the uptake and implementation of GPP policies in Southeast Asian countries. We will present a case study from Thailand and EU, where we will report a brief country report study results from Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. In addition to that, we will share the implementation challenges as well as enabling factors and solutions from the region. Due to several speakers will speak on very interesting topics with time of limitation. So I would like to briefly introduce speakers. For full speaker profile, we are already provided in webinar leaflet. Without further delay, I would like to invite the first speaker for the opening remarks. Ms. Francesca Gilli, Cooperation Attaché, European Union Delegation to Thailand. Francesca, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning to those in Europe and good afternoon to those in Asia. I hope you're having a good time, and even though it's Monday, I hope you had a good start of the week. It's always it can always be complicated on Mondays, but I hope you're fine. So it is indeed my great pleasure to be here and to attend this sub-regional webinar on enhancing the implementation of green public procurement in the Southeast Asia region. We are very pleased with this series of webinars on green public procurement, or GPP, as people say. And there were some national webinars in the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. The fact that there's so many activities shows that, and so much interest shows the importance that GPP is gaining in Southeast Asia, both at national and regional level. The European Union has started working on green issues since long time, but I would say a landmark event was the launch of the European Green Deal at the end of 2019. And the Green Deal is the EU's main growth strategy to deliver on the green transition in the decade to come. There are 8 pillars to the European Green Deal, and circular economy and sustainable consumption and production are one of the main pillars. And green public procurement is an important tool that we can use for sustainable consumption and production, and for circular economy as well. So I'm based in Thailand. I'm working at the delegation of the European Union to the Kingdom of Thailand, and through Switch Asia recently, there was Thailand's action plan on green procurement promotion that was supported. It was developed by the Pollution Control Department, the organization responsible for GPP in Thailand. So I'm taking Thailand as an example, but there are several countries that could be providing good examples and interesting cases. My colleague Anna Lupi from the European Union will explain later what examples are profiting and working well in Europe. So apart from Thailand, as I said, there were 3 other ASEAN countries that have been working on the issue of green public procurement, and we hope that all the ASEAN countries can start working on this important topic, because it can yield many benefits, not only environmental issues, but also social, health, economic, and political benefits. I'm sure Anna will give some concrete examples from Europe, but for example, the City Council of Copenhagen or the Swedish Administrative Development Agency have cut costs with their IT purchase following green public procurement principles. They've cut CO2 emissions, and this can provide public authorities, local authorities as well, with a tool to achieve environmental targets. We can aim for cleaner public transport, improved air quality, less toxic chemicals, a healthier working environment. And it can also be cost effective. So there are many benefits, as I was saying, to GPP. The benefits are also political, but there needs to be a political commitment. And it's important that not only ministries of environment or local authorities are involved, but it's important that different line ministries are part of this, and that public procurement, green public procurement, is adopted at a nationwide scale, but at national level, at local level, so that it's widely used, and principles can have a positive impact on the population at large. I would like to reaffirm the intention of working with Southeast Asian country on GPP to support moving forward with green transition in Southeast Asia. And we want to help fulfill the sustainable consumption and production goal under the Agenda 2030, so SDG 12. And we everyone sitting around this virtual table today is striving and working to reach this goal. And so thank you very much for attending the webinar today on GPP. I hope we will learn from other intervenants, and we will learn from concrete cases that can show the business case of using GPP as a tool in our work. Have a good rest of the day, and have a good webinar, and a fruitful one, and hopefully this will lead to networking and adoption of good practices. Thanks.
Thank you, Francesca, for very, very inspiring and kind opening remarks. And you have been assist the region in Asia Pacific for many years, and how can we improve the GPP in the region? So that I think that something that EU has been done so great in the region. Thank you once again very much. Next one, I would like to invite Dr. Mushtaq Mimon, Project Manager from EU Swiss Asia RPAC, to make a remark by RPAC. Dr. Mushtaq, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chayot, and and also the Ms. Francesca. So good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to welcome all of you to today's webinar, where we are discussing or learning from the 4 countries in Southeast Asia on the green public procurement, their journey, their successes, their challenges, and so on. So I will have that presentation later on, but I just want to take this opportunity to thank the generous support by the European Union for mainstreaming or supporting the mainstreaming SCP, Sustainable Consumption and Production, in Asia since 2007 through Switch Asia. And as a United Nations Environment Program, as a partner, is implementing the regional policy advocacy component. There's also a SCP facility where Dr. Zinaida is here. And then also there's a very huge component of the grants, and some of the grantees are also here as the green public procurement cuts across with all the work we are doing under the Switch Asia as one. And that's where we combine all our efforts under Switch Asia to put this as a week for the green public procurement promotion. And that's where from tomorrow we will have a regional training for 3 days. So I would like also invite all of you to please join that regional training on that. So as Francesca was mentioning, the EU has been championing green public procurement, and also it's very clear from the EU Green Deal and so on. But also, if we look on the other international agreements, like when we say SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and then the SDG 12, Responsible Consumption and Production, which is led by UNEP. And under the SDG 12, the 12.7 is on the sustainable public procurement. So within the SDG, there's indicator on SPP, which countries are going to meet, and this helps countries reporting and also to meet the target. But as we all know that green public procurement, which is synonymous to sustainable public procurement now, cuts across all the SDGs, you name it, whether you health, you're talking about the water, you're talking about the life under sea, you're talking about the life on land, you're talking about the climate action, you name it, green public procurement is the one of the mechanisms to achieve SDGs, because in developing countries, 30 to 50% of procurement is under the public procurement. So if we are promoting the public procurement on the lines of a green public procurement or sustainable public procurement, you can see the impact because of the size. And as we see in many countries, even the prices, like in India, LED lighting was very expensive. And then under the public procurement, they push it from 100 rupees to 20 rupees by bulk buying. Then in other countries, they're promoting, let's say, the reusable plastics rather than single-use plastics by ensuring that there's no single-use plastics in the public procurement. So we will learn a lot about these things. But again, I'm taking this opportunity to thank EU again for their generous support. But then in addition to that, also all the colleagues, especially APRSP, who have put so much of effort in all these 4 countries' work and supporting us. So Sanjay is here from there, and Dr. Chayot and Professor Tamrat, and then also the UNEP colleagues who have been working day and night, including Kuntani, Kunwiki, Subhasa-san, and so on. So at this note, please stay tuned, and also please also join us for tomorrow's regional training. Thank you very much. Back to Dr. Chayot, please.
Very much. Thank you, UNEP, for strong support and continued support on SPP, especially on GPP in the region. So we will hear from him again at the summary and closing session. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Zinaida Fadiva, team leaders from Switch Asia SCP facilities, and the floor is yours, Dr. Zinaida.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chayot. And on behalf of the Switch Asia SCP facility, we welcome all of the participants, friends, colleagues to this important event. And it is also very important to emphasize that for SPP or GPP work, 2 elements are quite important. This is a policy and practical work of implementation and work of creating of the policy support, helping to upscale the SPP practices on the ground. And a sustainable consumption and production facility of the Switch Asia is operational exactly in these 2 areas from 2008, working with hundreds of grants and dozens of technical assistance programs focusing on the policies. It has, as I mentioned, 2 components: supporting the grant projects, seen as innovators in the area of sustainable consumption and production, and a lot of innovative practices of the grant projects of Switch Asia are dedicated to exactly sustainable or green public procurement. And second element is development of the policies that become main frames for bringing forward these good innovative practices within the Switch Asia grants. So also what we do, and this is a very important element, is we keep this policy and practice elements together through bringing projects together for discussions and exchange of the experiences, assisting in communicating of the results. Would it be very exciting, positive, or somewhat better learning practices forward? And also, as I mentioned, we are informing policy and policies in various countries in Asian region. So SPP or GPP is a critical area of work for sustainable consumption and production. During the years of Switch Asia functioning, we had 9 single country projects, as well as 2 regional or multi-practice projects, and also quite a lot of technical assistance projects, particularly in Indonesia. Dr. Adi is with us today. I'm sure he will be sharing a lot of interesting lessons from them. From India, Sanjay, who is the head now of the APRCP, has been the pioneer in this area in India. In Mongolia and in Thailand, quite a lot of activities has been done, and my colleague Anne will be speaking about particular experiences in Thailand during this time. And as a result of these discussions today, and also during a very important 3 days training, which is coming from tomorrow forward, and which is facilitated by UNEP, we are hoping not only to highlight critical factors for mainstreaming sustainable public procurement, but also strengthen the network of colleagues working with these issues. Success to all of us. Thank you. Dr. Chayos, back to you.
Thank you very much, Sanaida. Thank you. And very interested to learn that when we see Dr. Mushtaq and yourself working closely together to promote the policy on SCP and GPP into implementation, I think that's something very interesting. We got implementation at local level, at country level. And you already advised us that UNEP and also SCP facility will have a training on GPP starting tomorrow in the next 3 days. So this is something we look at human resource capacity building that on this issue. So thank you very much for your kind remarks. Next, I would like to invite Sanjay Kumar, API SCP President, to make a remark on behalf of API SCP. Sanjay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Chayot. Good morning and afternoon to dignitaries on the panel, Ms. Francisca, Dr. Mushtaq Memon, and Dr. Jinaida, and Ms. Anna Lupi. My colleague from the API SCPs, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I sincerely thank organizer for inviting me to this webinar. The previous speakers have already set the tone for today's webinar and spoken on the importance of green public procurement. The business for adopting green public procurement is on the fact that governments across the world have tremendous purchasing power, which could be deployed strategically to achieve broader national and global goals. As per the latest estimate by the World Bank, the global value of public procurement is USD 11 trillion, representing 12% of global GDP. There is a greater realization now than even before to use this public money strategically to deliver broader public goods. Over the past decades, governments in the Asia Pacific have adopted green procurement policy at different points, taken different paths, and set distinct priorities, and they are at various stages of GPP implementation. However, the progress on GPP implementation has not been even across all countries. Thailand has been at the center of activities and has been testing ground for various models for advancing green procurement policy and practices in the region. Today's sub-regional workshop builds on result of Thai experience in advancing GPP and applying them to other Southeast Asian countries. I sincerely thank EU Switch Asia and UNEP for choosing APICP as implementing agencies for carrying out reports on enhancing GPP implementation in Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. GPP requires the integration of green criteria into procurement process so that procurers can identify the products and services that deliver the best value for money over their life cycle. While this seems to have complicated procurement process, many countries and organizations have developed tools that simplify the choice of buying greens and reduce administrative and technical burdens on procurement professionals. These includes standardized environmental criteria for priority products and services group, eco-labeling schemes that simplify the use of environmental criteria, and life cycle costing tools, focus on few high priority environmental impact. Many of these tools are available online and can be adopted to a specific country context. I'm sure many of you would have, as Dr. Mustaq mentioned, that UNEP has recently come up with the result of the first reporting exercise on SDG 12.7.1 indicators. It measures number of countries implementing sustainable public procurement policies and action plan. I'm glad to say that out of the 33 countries in the world that qualify for SDG 12.7.1 indicators on SPP implementation, 6 of them, namely China, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Philippines, and Indonesia, are Asia Pacific region. However, this also shows that some countries in the region have not responded to the call, although they have a robust GPP program. As per the methodology developed by the UNEP and approved by the UN Interagency Expert Group on SDGs, the average maturity level of countries in SPP implementation is in the medium to low range. This shows that as a region, we have a huge task ahead to enhance GPP implementation. I'm sure the report from various countries presented by my colleague later in the webinar will inform us about the different measures that needs to be taken to mainstream GPP in the region for achieving a higher maturity level as per the developed methodology. I also take this opportunity to thank APICP team who have worked hard to carry out status assessment on scaling up GPP implementation in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. I'm sure the outcome of studies will not only benefit these 4 countries, but also act as a template for scaling up GPP implementation in other countries in the region too. I also want to assure our partners that APICP will be taking forward the learning from these studies to various stakeholders in the region to our network and SCP forum. I'm glad to inform that our next flagship event, 16th Roundtable on Sustainable Consumption and Production, will be held in Sri Lanka in October this year. The roundtable will provide a perfect opportunity to take forward today's discussion and reflect on progress of GPP implementation in the entire Asia Pacific region. The details of the event will be shared with all of you in the due course of time. I, on behalf of APICP, take this opportunity to invite you all in advance for the roundtable in Sri Lanka. Thanks again for the opportunity and best wishes for the webinar proceeding. Thank you. Thank you all.
For introducing the remark for APICP. As you know, APICP is a not-for-profit organization who work on SCP in the region, Asia Pacific region. And he has mentioned that there will be 16, right? 16 APICP's conference this year in Sri Lanka in October. So team will share more information later on. Okay. Thank you again, Sanjay. Next, I would like to invite the keynote speaker today, to share experience from EU practices, Ms. Anna Lupi. She is a Legal and Policy Officer's Public Procurement Unit, European Commission. Anna, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me today. I will try to give you a little bit of an idea of what we do in the EU when it comes to sustainable procurement. So today I would really like to talk first of all of the state of play of EU sustainable procurement and a bit where we come from in terms of tradition, and also a little bit of what is next and what we plan to do and how we are trying to achieve our objectives. And I will also give you an idea of how we support public buyers in the EU, and in particular the work that we are doing in the European Commission on this. So let me start with something which is very often overlooked but is really important. The impact of procurement on the economy in the EU is very large. Actually, procurement accounts for 14% of our GDP. And our public buyers in the EU buy anything from services, social services, infrastructure, office supplies for the administration. They buy for schools, they buy for hospitals. So it's a very big and powerful market force which can actually shift also the markets if used strategically. And that's a little bit what we have been trying to do in the last few years. Our procurement policy comes from a tradition, of course, of fair competition, because we had to put together the markets of 28, now 27 different member states. So the first basis for this was to create an environment where economic operators could compete on an equal basis in any of the countries of the EU. But of course, moving on from this tradition, because we've had a legislative framework since the 70s, we have tried to also enable more and more our public buyers to make the most efficient use of public funds. And that for us doesn't mean that you have to buy at the lowest price. Quite the contrary. The idea that we are trying to push is that you have to use procurement as a strategic tool. And here comes the next goal. It's really making sure that this most efficient use of public funds goes in the direction of fostering the administration's policy goals. And of course, we have focused very much on sustainability issues in this environment. So you can say that the way we look at sustainable procurement is a way to prioritize sustainable growth, but still in this open and non-discriminatory and transparent public procurement market in the EU. As I was saying, we have had a European legal framework since the 1970s. We've had a set of directives for a while, and they are regulating in quite a lot of detail, actually, the procedural aspects. They don't yet regulate, and I'm saying yet, I'll come to this later, they don't yet regulate what the public buyers have to buy. So they regulate the procedure, they regulate the procurement process to make sure that it's transparent and non-discriminatory, but they don't tell buyers what to buy. Of course, we've had a lot of case law that was developed throughout the years, and our legal framework is also anchored very much in the WTO government procurement agreement, of which the EU itself is a member. But pretty soon we are also going to develop a bit of sectorial legislation in the EU, which will also include essentially mandatory criteria on sustainable procurement. An important aspect, as I was also hinting at, of public procurement in the EU is really the integration, not only between the markets of the different member states, but also the fact that these harmonized rules have allowed to develop cooperation between public authorities in different member states. And this cooperation takes place in many different ways. Sometimes we also fund at EU level some projects of cooperation. We've recently had a project between Finland and Sweden to tackle unemployment through public procurement. So we've had the governments of the different countries exchange practices and actually consult each other to build, in the case of Sweden, a model procurement process to incentivize, let's say, the employment of certain groups of people through public procurement. But we also have projects like the big buyers, where we basically fund a secretariat which makes sure that different contracting authorities from local authorities, hospitals, or central purchasing bodies get together and work together on common issues. So why do we support sustainable public procurement? As I was saying, because it is strategic procurement. It's not buying for the sake of buying, but also because we think it's beneficial in general for the public administration and for the community, and it's beneficial also for the policies that a certain administration is carrying out. So obviously, it helps the administration in identifying and addressing in advance environmental and social risks. It, again, as I was saying, stimulates responsible markets. That 14% can really shift of GDP, can really shift the direction that some of the markets are taking, particularly in sectors where the public administration tends to purchase a lot. It also proves to the citizens that the administration is not using a double standard when it comes to its own finances. So it leads, let's say, the administration to buy as the administration preaches in other areas, and it really supports certain policy goals, which also builds trust in the administration from the citizens. And of course, we see that in many cases, yes, sustainable procurement requires an additional, let's say, investment in the short run, but it does produce, in most cases, when it's done smartly, additional benefits from the society. So by buying something sustainably, you also produce added value, and by definition, that's a very good use of your public funds. How do we regulate that in concrete terms? Under our current legal framework, green and social considerations, because this is the way we also deal with sustainable procurement. It's not just about environmental considerations. We also very much push forward the pursuit of social objectives through public procurement. So green and social considerations are considered optional under the law. There is no obligation to use green and social criteria. However, in some cases where there is legislation mandating certain environmental and social rules, these have to be complied. And these are, for example, rules on pollution or emissions, rules on circularity, so how to deal with certain types of waste, or how to recycle, but also labor rules and health and safety rules and equality rules which apply to the staff that's performing the contract. Let me tell you something about what we do in the field of green procurement. In particular, you may have heard that we recently adopted a communication which is called the European Green Deal, and which really lays the ground for a more ambitious approach in general to fighting climate change and environmental issues. And this also lays the ground for us to work on some concrete actions in the field of green procurement. I was mentioning before the Big Buyers Initiative, which is focusing actually on 4 working groups working on climate and environment. The 2 most prominent one, and possibly most interesting if you want to check out this initiative, are working on a zero emission construction sites and on circular construction. And they are basically is a project to allow different contracting authorities from different member states of the EU to get together and discuss concrete issues and how to solve them together. So we've had, for example, market consultations which have been run together by different authorities in these fields. They have webinars where they share good practices and they share challenges and failures as well. Some of them have created guidance documents together. And they share also very much market intelligence, which is extremely important because in some cases they tend the different market intelligence that's present in different authorities and in different member states tend to complement each other. We are also developing through a stakeholder consultation a guidance on investing in procurement of sustainable infrastructure, which should come out this year. And we are also, as I was saying, we also have quite a number of legislative proposals at EU level that are being tabled, which will complement, let's say, the horizontal framework on public procurement and will impose new green public procurement criteria or targets depending on the sector and on the context. In specific sectors. So, for example, we will have a proposal that will relate to food and catering, most likely coming out next year. We will soon publish what we call the Sustainable Products Initiative, which will cover, among others, construction materials, textiles, and ICT products. There is already a batteries regulation, which includes some text on sustainable procurement, and which is at the moment it's a draft. Basically, it's being discussed, and the same goes for the Energy Efficiency Directive, which will raise the ambition when it comes to public purchases related to energy efficient buildings. As I was saying, we also have a social arm, let's say, of sustainable procurement. And here again, it's grounded in, let's say, a wider policy of the EU. We also have some legislation coming out in the field of social and labor affairs, which relates to public procurement, which includes a very strong link to the public procurement framework. For example, the Minimum Wage Directive or the Pay Transparency Directive, and these are really labor law instruments. So the obligations that they create, they will also, let's say, be applicable in the field of public procurement very much. Our main initiative in this field has been the publication of a guide on socially responsible public procurement, which is fairly comprehensive. and it basically walks the public buyer through the different steps of the public procurement procedure and provides recommendations on how to introduce social considerations in procurement. And it basically it's basically grounded on very much on the experience of different public buyers in the EU in the last, I would say, 15 years, more or less. So it's quite a concrete instrument. It's really not a policy instrument. It's an instrument that really relates to the different procedural steps. And it includes also a number of illustrative examples that we've collected throughout the EU. Maybe just a word on the different support tools that we have in this field, sustainable procurement. We also have a guide on green public procurement, which is called Buying Green, and which is basically more or less the same concept as the buying social, and it really walks you through the different steps of public procurement, and it provides advice on how to introduce green considerations. We also have a Gpp Training Toolkit. So this is a toolkit with guidance and with PowerPoint presentations that can be used by any authority in the EU, but also outside. You might want to check it out if you're interested. And it really provides, let's say, a basic training on green public procurement for the buyers. We also run some training sessions ourselves in the member states. Generally, we try to do it in the local language because, of course, it's easier for local authorities as well to understand. And we also have a sustainable procurement help desk, which used to be a green procurement help desk, and it's now expanded also to social considerations, which can be reached from across the EU by telephone or by email, and public buyers can ask us for information. We also have a competency framework on public procurement. So this is it's essentially a big matrix of competencies that public buyers might wish to have in their own organization when they do public procurement. There are different, of course, levels and different profiles that we have also identified in this matrix. So not all organizations are expected to have exactly the same competencies, of course. And it provides also a self-assessment tool to pick and choose the different competencies and test what is already there in the organization and what should be complemented in terms of competencies and skills. And it also very much focuses on skills and competencies which relate to sustainability as well. And finally, I want to mention the green public procurement criteria. So these are criteria that are developed as voluntary. So again, they can be used, and the idea is that you can copy paste them in your tenders quite easily. But they come, of course, with a lot of guidance and explanation, so that public buyers can also draw inspiration from them and slightly tweak them or modify them depending clearly on the context and the subject matter of what they are buying. I would advise you to visit. We have a page with tools for public buyers. Hopefully, you will get the presentation, and you can click on the link. And finally, I wanted to mention that we are running quite a few webinars lately to promote the supporting tools and the materials that we have produced for public buyers. In particular, we are now currently promoting our guide on socially responsible public procurement with a series of short lunchtime talks which take place at midday Central European time. The next one will be on gender equality, and it's taking place this week. You might also want to check out, we have a YouTube channel where we publish all of our webinars and all of our audiovisual material for public buyers. We also have some interviews that we've run with very experienced public buyers and experts who tell us about their experience of using innovative solutions in public procurement or pursuing social objectives through procurement. And we also have created a LinkedIn group, which is called Actors for Social Impact Procurement. And it's really intended as a platform for the different participants to share news and events and information on the topic of socially responsible public procurement. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you have a fruitful discussion today.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you for sharing insight information. I learned a few things from your presentation. That is that from your experience that public procurement is still the biggest buyer. Okay, about 14% GDP, and public buyer will buy a wide range of products, service, and works. So you have three issues, and you have very clear goals on procurement policy, both for environment and social. That's what you have shared with us, and also have mandatory in certain sectors. And I'm very interested to learn that you also have supporting tools, webinar, and so on to share within the region. The next step is how Asia Pacific region learn and adapt to our local context. That may be something we can learn from the next steps. Thank you very much again, Anna, for sharing very useful and insight information. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, we have finished the opening and keynote session. Now we move into the technical session. We will have four presentations. Firstly is the short presentation on result of the project Mainstreaming Green Integration in Thailand, Transformation from Policy to Implementation. That will be delivered by Professor Thamrongrat Mongjarean. Okay, he is from Thai SCP Network and President of AAPSCP Foundation. Dr. Thamrongrat, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chayot. So I would like to, present the result of the project, supported by Switch Asia SCP facility. That the title on that, and this is the result of this project, coming to the our webinar today. So I will inform you more about that. So next slide, please. Okay. The topic today, I will talk about three topics. The first one is to overview of the project, and then the 5 main outputs of the project, and the last one is the outcome of the project. So let's go to the first one then. Okay, this project, is as I mentioned, is a 15-month project supported by the Switch Asia technical assistance to Thailand, during June 2020 to September 2021. The Thailand has the GPP plan, by Pollution Control Department starting since 2008, with the central government, and then expand to the local government, public university, and the third plan, which is ongoing right now, focus on the expand to the private sector also. So the pain point would be, the government and the private sector, they might be different, and also we don't have the vendor list, so and also how to overcome that pain point. So this comes to the project. So the main partner of this project is Pollution Control Department, Office of Natural Resource and Environment Policy and Planning, and Department of Environmental Quality Promotion. So all of this is under the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment of Thailand. And we work closely with the expert team from SCP facility and Thai SCP network. So the main objective, we have 4 objectives: enhance the procurement, cluster all the products and services. You know, we have several products and services that, you know, we call eco products, but, you know, they are gathering everywhere. And also only the clean label is the one that, you know, is approved to be the public procurement. And the third one is to develop the policy and action plan, you know, according with the plan of Thailand. And the last one is the knowledge and information sharing. You know, the last one, as I mentioned, we would like to share the experience with among ASEAN and also the leading SCP country also. So the output of this project is the draft policy and action plan of them, and also the National Green Directory. I will inform more on this, and increase awareness for the government, especially the private sector and the green consumer. Last one is to strengthening the SCP network in Thailand and also in ASEAN country. So this is the overview of the project. We have done we start with the first one, which is the, you know, review the best practices, especially from the European Union, also other countries in Asia, in North America, in South America, and also in Africa. And secondly, we did the gap analysis, you know, using the SWOT and also the PASTEL to see the existing green procurement policy action plan in Thailand, and also the best practices that we found from European Union and other countries. The third one is we propose the clustering of the product and services, and also draft the action plan. And also we come up with the green integrated policy in there. And also when we draft this, you know, working with the stakeholder, we did the fourth one, which is a very important one. We test with the 3 pilot organizations. We focus on the first one is the central government. We choose Pollution Control Department, which is the first, the organization that oversee the green public procurement in Thailand. Second one, we select the local government, you know, Rangsit government, very close to the Bangkok city. And the third one, we select the private sector. This is the Stock Exchange of Thailand. They have close to 1,000 listed company, which is, you know, their purchasing power is quite big also. So with this project, we have done select and see what their best good practices, and also how to improve a possible improvement of their procurement. And then from that, we come up with the handbook. So this is the 5 main output of the project. The first one, as I mentioned, the policy and action plan to promote GPP SPP in Thailand. So this is done with the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources at the same time together. Second is the clustering of the green product and process and services. And then we propose the guideline for the National Green Directory. So this is a very important one that, you know, we think that this is the main output. Third one is the pilot project. As I mentioned to you, we have a central government, we have a local government, and also the private sector. So we learn the good practice from that. From that, all 3, we come up with, you know, along the 15-month project, we have a seminar and training for knowledge sharing and dissemination. We have done 6 training seminar in Thailand. You know, there are more than 750 participants. And we also have the same time with the SCP facility, we have done 2 regional seminar, which is more than 350 participants there. And the last one is the 5th one is the media to promote and raise awareness. So we have a video clip, both a short version, which is only a few minutes, and then the long version. We have a booklet and brochure. So all of this available on the, you can download anytime. So this is the outcome of the project. During the process, I talked closely, we discussed with the Switch Asia SCP facility during the project that, after this project, and we should have something to work on, because this is the important stepstone. The first one is within Thailand. So Switch Asia SCP facility, extend that the support to Thailand, which is a technical assistant. The main partner is Pollution Control Department and Federation of Thai Industry. Both of them have the directory. One is for the public procurement. The Federation of Thailand has the directory for all the green product and services, which is some of them are not under the public procurement, the government green procurement. Sorry, back to the slide, please. Okay, so this is the development of the vendor list registration system, okay, from January to June. And the second one is the supported by the Switch Asia Regional Policy Advocacy component, which is enhancing the implementation of green public procurement in Southeast Asia region, which is the today. So with this project, from the experience of Thailand, we and also in the European Union, we expand to 3 countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines, to study all and then compare. So this will be experience sharing and also the cross-fertilizing for leapfrogging in the region. I think this is the main objective of the Switch Asia Regional Policy Advocacy component, and also the EU Switch Asia. So next slide, which is the last slide, which is I would like to thank Switch Asia, especially Switch Asia SCP facility to support, and also all the partners within Thailand that work together under the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment, and also the Thai SCP network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rat, for sharing very interesting result of your project. With that, I would like to go directly to the next short report. As Dr. Rat mentioned that he will share his experience from EU Switch main integration project into other countries in the region. So we have now the project on. So we would like to report on the implementation of GPP in that region countries. We will have Indonesia, Malaysia, and Philippines. First, I would like to invite the Indonesian team, Noor Adi Wardojo. He is from Ministry of Environment and Forestry Indonesia, and he was also past president of APSCP. His team will be Dr. Nura Manjati. So she is the head of M&E Division, Ministry of Environment and Forestry Indonesia. So the floor is yours, Adi and Ibu Susi. The floor is yours. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Kun Chayot. So good day. Warm greetings from Jakarta. And so first of all, I'd like to congrats the webinar and appreciate the continuing collaboration of UNEP, EU Switch Asia in APRCP, and also congrats to the extension of the mandate of the 10-year framework of program of SCP as a multi-stakeholder collaboration platform for SCP for SDG 12 until end of 2030, and the continuation of the mandate to UNEP, serving as the secretariat of the 10 YFP. And also, I'd like to congratulate the publishing of the ASEAN framework of SCP with the support of the ASEAN Secretariat, APRCP, and UNEP through the EU Switch Asia 2. And as I'm now stepping aside And I would like to promote the next generation, the new phase of SCP Indonesia. And so I would like to invite Ibu Susi Nurmayanti to present on behalf of Indonesia for the study of GPP Indonesia. Ibu Susi, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Adi. Good morning, good afternoon, distinguished colleagues, speakers, and ladies and gentlemen. As Pak Adi said that I would like to present Indonesia GPP current status until 2021. The topics we would like to present is the first is goals and targets on national GPP. The second is regulatory framework. Third, green label scheme for GPP. Fourth, challenge issues. Five, roadmap and next steps. And last is information system of green products for GPP. The GPP in Indonesia is an instrument that aims to realize behavior change of government officials in operating the activities that are more efficient and environmentally friendly. Conceptually, GPP is a part of governance reform, especially in the management of comprehensive and more responsible green procurement. This is also to clarify the government commitment to encourage the Indonesian economy to grow towards green economy, reduce greenhouse gases, and implementing a circular economy towards sustainable development. And the targets for implementing GPP in Indonesia is to support the government to reduce greenhouse gases emissions, to increase the opportunities for domestic SMEs to participate in government procurement, create wider market for business who are able to innovate to produce high quality green products, improve the government's image in the national and international community level, create a healthy and environmentally friendly living environment, and strengthening the integration of government policies in the field of environmental management and sustainable development. The policy for green label and GPP has been mandated in the law number 32 2009 concerning the environmental protection and management, government regulation number 46 2017 concerning environmental economic instruments, and presidential decree number 16 2018 concerning government procurement of goods and services, and the Minister of Environment and Forestry Regulation number 5, 2019, concerning the procedures of implementation of environmentally friendly labels for the environmentally friendly goods and services or green procurement. While the operational goods and services procurement is for 3 products listed in the regulation of MOAF number 5, are regulated in the circular letter of the head of National Public Procurement Agency or LKPP number 16 of 2020 concerning green products or green industrial products to be used in sustainable public procurement of goods and services. The presidential regulation number 12 2021 has been stipulated regarding the government procurement of goods and services. The presidential regulation clearly mandated the use of environmentally friendly or sustainable product in government procurement. The presidential regulation describes the commitment of the Indonesian government to implement government procurement through good governance and contribute to the efficient use of national resources and minimize the amount of waste generated. Indonesia also adopted UN SDGs into the presidential regulation number 59 2017 on the achievement of sustainable development goals. Okay, the policy of the MOAF regulation number 5 is directed at effort to improve environmental performance, efficiency in the use of raw materials, energy and water, as well as reducing pollution and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This policy is also directed in relation to growing green and sustainable markets and investment, encourage innovation and improving the local economy, as well as encouraging the provision of incentives for business actors who produce green products. In accordance with the mandate of MOAF regulation number 5, this GPP technical team was determined by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, has developed the environmentally friendly product criteria and also implementation scheme to be further defined as reference for environmentally friendly products for GPP implementation. This is the scheme which covered by the scheme of GPP in Indonesia. The first is Eco-Label Type 1 and Eco-Label Type 2, Indonesian Legal Wood, Energy Saving Label, Environmentally Friendly Technology Verification, and Green Industry Standard. Next slide, please. These are the challenges and issues from the government side. There is the lack of information and understanding of GPP, number of environmentally friendly products, and markets readiness in implementing GPP or SPP. The issues of the price of environmentally of green product which are more expensive than similar non-green products, and need to be prepared norms, standards, guidelines, and manuals and technical criteria related to the procurement of green product or sustainable public green procurement and sustainable public procurement. And preparation of monitoring and evaluation system for the implementation of GPP or SPP. And from the provider or industrial side, industry as a provider of green product is prepared with certain condition. Change in production patterns require investment, including additional cost for certification and labeling process. And guarantee of purchase of green product in the market, goods and services in the market, and there is no attractive incentive scheme, not yet, motivate to the providers or industrial, yes, or industries yet. Pre-entry of imported product cause unbalanced market conditions and detrimental to the domestic industries. Okay, this is the roadmap and the next step. The pilot implementation of GPP started in 2020, whereas in 2019 we disseminate the GPP implementation policy and also established the MOAF regulation number 5 in 2019. And the pilot implementation started in 2020 in several ministries, agencies, and local governments in Indonesia. The pilot was carried out for 2 environmentally friendly or 2 green product scheme, which are listed in the attachment of the MOAF regulation number 5, that are photocopy paper with eco-label and wood furniture with SVLK. The pilot implementation of GPP also not yet. Still a roadmap and next step. Can you back to the roadmap and next step?
Okay. Thank you, Thank you, Pak Adi and Ibu Susi. Thank you very much for sharing very interesting and useful information at country level. As I mentioned to our participant earlier that there are a lot of information and speakers, so what she has said that she has present and the PowerPoint will be delivered, will be shared on so the website. So this is something that I think we can review that later. So thank you very much once again, Pak Adi and Ibu Susi. Next, I would like to invite our friends from Malaysia, Dr. Harry Raghavan, to share his experience on this project as well. It's a short report on enhancing the implementation of GPP in Malaysia. Dr. Harry, the floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Chayut.
Yep.
Thank you for inviting me for this webinar. Good afternoon to everybody who's attending this webinar. Greetings from Kuala Lumpur. And thank you, of course, to Switch Asia, APRCP for including Malaysia as part of this lesson learned study. So I will present the study that we have done to do some basic assessment on the implementation of the GPP in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, the term government green procurement is used instead of green public procurement. And it's defined as the acquisition of products, services, work in the public sector that takes into account environmental criteria and standards to conserve the nature and environment resources, which minimizes and reduces the negative impacts of human activity. But that's defined in the first guideline that was issued for the implementation of the GGP in Malaysia. So the foundation really started back in 2009 when Malaysia issued the National Green Technology Policy. So in it, you have this green technology as a preferred choices in procurement of products and services. And then, of course, in the budget 2010, subsequent year, there were some announcement in regards to the implementation of the GPP. And then between 2012 and 16, the government implemented some sort of a project, a very sort of internal project, Sustainable Consumption Production Policy Support with funding from Switch Asia. And as a result of that, the 11th Malaysia Plan, 2016-2020, prominently integrated SEP into its plan. And under strategy B1, there's a mention about the implementation of creating government green procurement to be implemented and to be made mandatory soon. And then subsequently, the government Malaysia developed the National Sustainable Consumption and Production Blueprint, also using the same Switch Asia pilot program that was supported earlier, to come up with a comprehensive long-term vision to implement SEP in Malaysia. And in the blueprint, the government green procurement is also stated very clearly as the objective of the government to implement GPP as part of the meeting the requirement of the SDG 12 through the implementation of the National Sustainable Consumption and Production Blueprint. At the moment, the government is also assessing many data to understand better the implementation of SDG 12, and therefore the implementation of the SEP blueprint also, although the plan is there, but the implementation has not taken place completely, and the main one that is being implemented is the GGP. Okay, so the policies and plans that support the implementation of GGP, as I mentioned, it started back in 2019 to understand what are the elements needed to implement GGP. And as a result of the implementation of the pilot project to understand GGP better in Malaysia through the Sustainable Consumption Production Project, The government was confident to issue a government administrative order, and therefore we don't have a legislation that has got a legal mandate for the implementation of the GPP in Malaysia. In 2014, the Ministry of Finance issued the Treasury Circular. So that is part of the, what you call as the government administrative order. And that there's this mention of implementation of GGP within limited government agencies, and also a short-term action plan 2013-2015 was issued, with first piloting phase covering 5 ministries. In this short-term action plan, essentially, some of the things that is mentioned there are the pilot project itself, and understanding what are the policies and regulations that can be developed for the long-term implementation of the GGP, also to understand the government's requirement in terms of the current procurement procedures, and also to understand what are the products and services that need to be selected for these pilot projects, and then subsequently to other phases as well. So those are some of the action activities that took place under the short-term action plan. And then the government issued a long-term plan, 2016 and up to 2030. And through this plan, the agencies that's involved has been expanded, initially from 5 to 12, and then currently up to 25 ministries covered under the government green procurement implementation. There are various activities that the government is doing in regards to the implementation of GGP, and in order to ensure smooth implementation of this GGP, the government created a scheme called My Hijau scheme. So all programs, guidelines, activities are conducted under this My Hijau scheme that is implemented by one dedicated agency called the Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Agency. And under this My Hijau scheme, there are many programs that supports the implementation of GGP, as well as some other objectives under the 11th Malaysia Plan, and then of course now the 12th Malaysia Plan, to implement elements of the sustainable consumption and production. So you have the My Hijau SME entrepreneurship support, how to support the SMEs to understand the importance of the green procurement, green products and services. You have the My Hijau labeling, and then one of the most important activity under this My Hijau program is the directory that provides guidelines for industries to be into the My Hijau scheme, and therefore you can qualify for the government green procurement program. Following the implementation of the My Hijau program, the government also issued many guidelines. Starting from 2013, we have version 1.0, and then the latest one we have is the version 3.0 in 2020. As I mentioned, there are many activities that's happening under the My Hijau program. It encompasses, directory guidelines, training, awareness, as well as support from the sustainable financing, incentives, and so on. And in terms of the eco-labeling, whether it's type 1, type 2, or type 3, there are criteria that is mentioned, and in order for you to qualify as a vendor in the GGP, all the eco-labeling logos must be accepted under the My Hijau scheme. So you have various types of existing green labels, as well as what is being developed locally. It has to be accepted by the My Hijau scheme as part of its program in order for you to qualify. So in terms of the goals and target, as I mentioned earlier, the government issued the short-term and the long-term plan. But essentially, the main goal or target is to support the climate change commitment of the government of Malaysia, and essentially to meet the 40% reduction greenhouse gases, and then the target that is mentioned in this short-term and long-term plan, as well as the Malaysian plan, is essentially the percentage of the government procurement should be considered as green procurement. So there's progressively set as 15%, 20%, and so on. So up to 2020, the target was 20% of the total government procurement should under this government green procurement scheme. You can see the progression there in terms of how the implementation of the GGP progressed in the 11th Malaysia Plan from 2016 to 2020. Yeah, so then in the latest guideline, as well as in the new 12th Malaysia Plan 2021-2025, there's more initiative that is being planned to be met under the implementation of the GGP. Although again the target is the percentage of the total government procurement that comes under the government green procurement scheme. But nevertheless, these initiatives are meant to create more understanding of what are other detailed targets the government can start developing in the coming phases of the implementation of the GGP in Malaysia. So the 12th Malaysia Plan clearly showed the commitment of the government to increase the implementation of the GGP, as well as to explore many other sustainability aspects of sustainable consumption and production that can be included in the GGP program in future. So these are some of the results that has been monitored by the Malaysian Green Technology and Climate Change Corporation. You can see there's a progressive improvement in terms of the percentage of the government procurement that comes under the GGP, and there's also attempt made to show what is the savings in terms of the greenhouse gases reduction. And in the 12 Malaysia Plan, again, the target is set for 2025 to achieve 25% of the government procurement under the government green procurement. And naturally, in the 12 Malaysia Plan, it was reported that the government, the GGP has achieved its target that was set for 2020, which was 20%. But the final result at the end of 2020 was 20.7%. And therefore, that target has been successfully achieved. Again, this shows another dimension of the implementation, where you see some sort of distribution in terms of the types of products and services that has been purchased under the government green procurement, although we do see some inequality in terms of concentration of the purchases done if you look at these categories. And this was reported in the latest annual report of the Malaysian government, Malaysian Green and Climate Change Agency. Yeah, some of the challenges that we noted in our assessment and discussion with the private sector as well as the government agencies, essentially the implementation at the moment is business to government, and there's a huge potential if some sort of voluntary schemes is extended to the private sector as well. So the involvement of the private sector at the moment is rather limited to be aware of what are the criteria for you to be included in the vendor scheme. but otherwise there's not so much of discussion in terms of how to develop further GGP with the private sector. As we mentioned just now, there's no legal framework as yet. This is done through an administrative guideline and order, although the implementation so far has been good in terms of achieving the percentage targets that were set because of the close cooperation between these federal agencies. As I mentioned, the private sector's involvement is very low in terms of, and there's this research shows that green procurement implementation in Malaysia is still not prioritized yet from the private sector perspective. Perhaps just a small percentage of the private sector that is now enrolled in the GGP program. Now, in terms of the next step, obviously, we can say the target was set under GGP is successfully achieved because of the close cooperation of the agencies. And we expect that this close cooperation will further benefit if these government green procurement is expanded to the private sector as well. And of course, it's mentioned in the voluntary national report, some of the target that has been achieved under GGP. It's important to include GLCs because GLCs in Malaysia, they're very big, and that there could be enormous impact if they are involved in some sort of green procurement scheme, either under the current GGP or some sort of parallel scheme that can be developed using the same sort of methodology and criteria and so on. The other issue is that in regards to how do you create professional certified procurer that understands green procurement. That is something that's going on now, some discussion between the private sector as well as the government. We have the National Productivity Center, certification body, CIRIM, as well as the Green Purchasing Network Malaysia are looking into these possibilities. Next slide, please. Of course, more research needs to be done to understand how green procurement is being implemented by the listed companies in the Bursa. So at the moment, Bursa doesn't require any green procurement, only sustainable reporting. So that is something that we need to explore further to understand how the GGP sort of a mandate can be extended to the private sector as well. And in terms of the platform to understand green procurement, the MAHIJAU is there, but that's only for the government. So some sort of a national green directory that has got a broader green procurement platform with training, capacity, awareness, as well as a broader range of products and services than the GGP scheme at the moment. That should be explored as well. Yes, so that's briefly what I can present from the study that we have done. You can download the slides, but I assume that the report will also be available, the full report will also be available soon on the Switch Asia website. Thank you very much, Dr. Chayut.
Okay, thank you, Harry, for very interesting and informative information. However, to the time limits, I would like to next invite Dr. Jonah Balikas from Philippines. She is currently Board of Trustee APSCP. Dr. Jonah, if possible, we keep to 7 minutes. We already 15 minutes behind schedule. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Chayut. I will definitely make sure that I keep it within the prescribed time.
Thank you.
So I'm glad to be here. It's my pleasure to be able to present the status of the green public procurement implementation in the Philippines. I'm Jonah Baquilas, and I'm representing Asia Pacific Roundtable for Sustainable Consumption and Production. So I will be covering the following topics. First one would be focusing on the GPP in the Philippines, where we are so far. And then I'll be touching on the challenges and issues, and what's next for GPP in the Philippines. All right, so I'd like to give a little bit of a background on the landscape of GPP in the Philippines. So in terms of legislation, there was a move to reform the government procurement system, and this was enacted in 2003. At this point in time, green public procurement was not yet within the system, but it definitely paved the way for systematizing the procurement system. In 2004, the National Eco-Labeling Program was enacted, and then eventually several legislative measures were enacted, and in 2020, we've had the Green Public Procurement Act, which identified the products that will be covering the green criteria or green public procurement is covering. So the key implementing agency in green public procurement is the one that is also in charge of government procurement, which is GPP BTSO. I'd like to acknowledge that we do have some representatives from GPP BTSO, the Government Procurement Policy Board, Technical Support Office. And the initiatives are supported by the following agencies. We have the Department of Budget and Management Procurement Service, National Economic and Development Authority, Department of Trade and Industry, Department of Energy, and Department of Environment and Natural Resources. As mentioned earlier, in 2004, the country enacted the National Eco-Labeling Program, and the key agency that's in charge of this is the Green Choice Philippines, which is a Type 1 Eco-Labeling Program. And currently it has already established criteria for 40 products, and the key goal of the National Eco-Labeling Program is to shift behavioral patterns towards sustainable consumption and production. So how did we select the products that were included in green public procurement, at least the initial products that were selected for green public procurement? So the following criteria were used: market readiness, making sure that there are already existing suppliers or vendors that can provide the products that we need, and also looking into the environmental impact of these products, the cost implications, because of course, switching to green products can be costly for some product categories. So this has been considered as well. Practicability, how much of the national government agencies and local government units are procuring certain products so that we can have economies of scale. And then the support to government environmental objectives as well as to the local economy. So in the following 2 slides, you'll see the list of products that are under green public procurement in the Philippines. They're categorized under 2 product categories. The first one is 10 common use supplies and equipment. So we have the following: multi-copy paper, toilet paper. These are really common supplies that are procured by the agencies. And then in the next slide, you'll see the non-common use supplies and equipment, bigger purchases. So you have appliances, computers, vehicles, as well as services such as food and catering services and training facilities, hotels, and venue. I'll be sharing some results as of December 2020. Green criteria implemented. The green criteria was implemented in 6 out of 10 CSEs. So you see here, toilet paper, record book, LED lights, disinfectant spray, detergent powder, and cleaner. And in the next slide, you'll see the implementation in 10 non-CSEs. Next, you have here, it has been implemented in purchasing computer monitors, air conditioners, vehicles, and copiers. So as of December 2020, 68 procuring entities, or 16.7%, this is out of 407 procuring entities, consistently adopted green specifications in their procurement of non-CSE items and equipment. And 228 procuring entities consistently adopted green specifications in their procurement of non-CSE items, whereas 38 procuring entities did not consistently adopt. So more like just once or twice procurement of the green specification. As of December 2021, well, even during the pandemic, the trainings related to GPP continued, no? And it was delivered through webinars. This was also incorporated in the regular trainings that GPPB, or the Government Procurement Policy Board, conducts among its members. They can be NGAs or national government agencies, state universities and colleges, government-owned and controlled corporations or GOCCs, and constitutional bodies and other executive offices. So a total of 140 GPPB recognized trainers underwent training. So these people can actually, do the trainings themselves so that they can cascade it to their own agencies or departments. And meanwhile, 40 procuring entities were given trainings as of December 2021. All right, so let's go to the challenges and the issues. Next slide. Okay, so one of the key challenges, and I've seen this also in some of the slides of my colleagues in other countries. The first one is GPP awareness. There really is a need to mainstream government public procurement, even within the government system, which would include the government, the national government agencies and the local government units, the state universities and colleges. There is still a need to really push GPP and make these entities, act on it by making sure that they really, follow the green specifications whenever they procure the products. So full compliance to green criteria is also something of a challenge. You've seen that for the CSEs, 6 out of 10. Well, there's still 4 products that we still need to see the compliance to green criteria, and in the non-CSEs, 6 products still has to comply to green criteria. Also, market readiness is a bit of a challenge because in some areas in the Philippines, the suppliers may not be ready with the products that they can give to the government. And employee turnover was also mentioned as one of the challenges because once people are trained, some of them or most of them do not really stay in the office. So new people will have to be trained again instead of advancing the training to the next level. And moving on to the ways forward for GPP in the Philippines. So how do we move forward and what's next for GPP in the Philippines? First is to strengthen the foundation of GPP implementation, ensuring that there's awareness promotion within the government and also outside of the government. During our country webinar, we invited an agency, an organization from the private sector, and in their own way, they were able to start SCP within the organization, but it was out of their own volition. So having programs for not just for the government sector, but not just for the public sector, but also for the private sector would be something that is needed in order to really push for SCP in the region. Also sustain GPP reforms and expand product list with green specifications. So as mentioned earlier, we currently have 20 and we look forward to having more. And then mainstream GPP trainings, hopefully when we go back to normal later on, we can have more trainings conducted face-to-face and have more interactive trainings. And lastly, to promote eco-labeling and not just within the public sector, but also within the private sector. And with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Joanna, for sharing the Philippine experience on GPP. As I had mentioned earlier, that this technical session one is about the result of the study at country level, that we integrate the Thailand experience and also EU experience, and we try to expand into 3 countries. And this is a very short report, okay? Let me tell you that they just finished country report and conduct country webinar about 2 weeks ago. So that's why there's a lot of information sharing and knowing with stakeholders. Okay, with that, I would like to thank you all the speaker for session 1. Now we would like to move to session 2, summary and closing session. We would like to invite Dr. Mushtaq Memon to share with us the lesson learned from the cross-fertilization of the 4 Southeast Asian countries, good practices to advance GPP, GP, and how to leapfrogging. So this is how to leapfrogging is the keyword that Dr. Mushtaq always would like to inspire us. Dr. Mushtaq, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Chayot, and good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen. So let's, because of the interest of time, we will go a bit quickly, but as the deck or slides are available, and if you have more questions, then you can write to me and I will try to explain later on. So basically, as we have to see, like we already discussing what is sustainable or green public procurement and how does SPP differ from GPP in theory, and then in practicality, it has become now almost same. And then learning from different countries as we reviewed the 4 countries, and then what is the knowledge or lessons to help in leapfrogging. So we'll be a bit like fast on this. So as we already now discussed also in the morning, I mentioned public procurement is about the government expenditures or government procurement. However, this trickle down to the private procurement as well, because they are the bidders and they have their in-house procurement system. So they have to align in line with the government requirements. So when we talk about the public procurement, it also takes care of the private procurement, especially for those bidders. And green public procurement started with the initially environment in focus. Next, clear. And then we can see that when we were talking about the sustainable development, and then based on that, the sustainable consumption and production, then on the both hands, how we transform the consumption into green and production into green. So both, like when we consume, suppose, let's say the choice of the plastic bags. So that is our consumption choice. But how we produce the plastic bags, that's our choice of the production. And how this can help the public procurement to achieve both, that is very important to understand. And that's why I mentioned this is a target 12.7 in SDGs. And as we see that the sustainable public procurement goes beyond the green public procurement, and it has economic considerations as well, the social considerations, including the ethical production, the human rights issues, and also gender and so on, and the economic, also the equity and so forth. So basically now the green public procurement also have a same like a set of the indicators almost. So that's why we synonymous both as one. So in many countries, because the green public procurement was set up before the this SDG 12.7, so the reporting for SPP is based on the GPP. In other countries, they directly established SPP process. So we should not confuse now the countries to have a double processes. That's my point. So the single process, either GPP or SPP, is good enough to work through. And then when we are talking about the purchasing, it's usually like a quicker, smaller, and so on. But here, when we are talking about the procurement, it has I would say the major scale, the bidding processes. So time-wise is longer also, and so on. So that is very important to be differentiate between the procurement and the purchasing. But again, we have a green purchasing as well. We have a green procurement as well. And as we are today discussing more on the public procurement, that is like where the public money is spent. And most of the times the consumers directly or indirectly are the public. So one example is like infrastructure, the transport, let's say the metro or the BTS or the underground and so on, where the procurement is done by the government, but the consumers are the public directly. In other cases, suppose the procurement is for the office work, like ballpoints, the plastic or so on. But if they the beneficiaries are public from the office work, whether it's a tax office, whether it's a law office and so on of the government or the hospitals and so forth. So basically, there's a direct and indirect beneficiaries is public from the public procurement. So the whole point is about the value for money on the whole life cycle basis. And value for money is not just terms of financial returns, but it's also the environmental returns, the social returns, and the economic returns and so on. So basically, when we use the word value for money over the life cycle, it encompasses all the areas for better returns. And we are looking at the very huge amounts of the money involved in the public procurement. As we saw that in EU, it may be around 80%, but in developing countries, it's 30 to 50% of the GDP. So when we are now talking about this green public procurement in different sectors, as I mentioned that this is important to look on the different sectors: energy sector, housing sector, transport sector, water sector, food sector or agriculture sector, textile sector. So then it's much easier to understand how this green public procurement can make a bigger impact into that. And also, as I say, that economic considerations, environmental aspects, and the social aspects has to be looked as a whole together to see how we can create the balance or get a value for money for all these aspects. So that's where we are looking on the green ecological or environmental friendly or environmentally responsible procurement. That means even the goods per se, and socially responsible, inclusive, ethical procurement, and also the efficient, competitive, and innovative procurement. So there are two things. One is the procurement processes itself, and number two is what is being procured, the services or the goods. So we have to be very clear that we are talking about the processes to be efficient, to be environmentally friendly, to be socially responsible, or also we are talking about the goods and services. So I would suggest we have to look on both very carefully to design the sustainable public procurement or green public procurement. So to achieve the benefits, we have to look on the different, again, areas one by one, and then combine together the social benefits, the environmental benefits, economic benefits, and so on. And I will not go into the details of this benefits, but you can look on that in each different sectors, how the economic benefits work, how the environmental benefits work, and how the social benefits work. As I mentioned, you're talking about energy is a different way of evaluating that, like a solar energy. Now, procuring solar energy is a green good. However, it cannot bring the benefits unless you know that how the solar panels were produced, how the efficiency of the solar panels, how the solar panels will be operated and maintained, and how the green jobs or the social inclusiveness will be there, how the solar panels will be discarded and recycled and so on at the end of the day. So if you put all this like specifications, then only this will be the green public procurement for the solar energy, and that will create a major impact rather than just inviting in a conventional way of the solar energy. So that's where we have to look again on the lots of, even the governance is a very, very important part of a green public procurement, that how the bribery, corruption, and so on, child labor, everything can be really addressed. That is very important part of a sustainable or green public procurement. So we are now moving to see that how we can really bring this to raise the awareness as well, like a think green, buy green, be green, as the EU says. So how really this can be useful, as I say, that this can penetrate into the private procurement or even in the personal purchasing at homes. So we have to really make this as an awareness tool as well. And that's where we are looking, as I mentioned, that best value for money, environmental aspects, social aspects, but we have to see how different countries are taking this path to achieve the environmental and social responsibility, total cost of the ownership, and effectiveness, delivery, and availability through the green purchasing or green public procurement. So we have looked at the different, like as I say, sectors, but the most important that always comes for the circular economy per se is starting backward from the waste. How you can reduce the waste in, let's say, in any sector per se. So when you're talking about the waste reduction, the recycling, and also in terms of the efficiency, like energy efficiency and so on. So basically, when all these clauses are put into the life cycle assessment, then you can easily improve the green public procurement impacts for the society. So again, I will, in the interest of time, not go into the different examples, like this is from Japan. Next. 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 And as in the morning, we heard quite a good examples from Europe. So as Europe has been leading on the green public procurement over the years, and they have established quite a bit of standards, the experiences and so on. So it's always good to learn from the European examples. And again, I'll not go into the details here, but you are welcome to ask any questions later on. Next. 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 Next, please. Okay, now come to our main topic here. So we have to review the 4 countries and to see how we can create the leapfrogging, learning from each other. And also, as I put the other examples, like learning from EU, learning from Japan or other countries as well. Next, please. So basically, our target is like, this is Asia Pacific situation, no? That we are consuming, let's say, 50% of resources, and we are contributing only 32% of GDP if you look at the center. But within the Asia Pacific also, like one country may be consuming more than 15 kilogram to produce $1 GDP, other may be 0.25 kilogram. So this inequality can also be bridged through the trade that is based on the green public procurement. And so it will be the technology transfer, it will be the knowledge economy transfer, as well as the products and services and so on. So this is one of the good starting way to look on the resource efficiency gaps, to see how we can have a sustainable consumption and production to bridge this gap of a GDP, putting the pressure on the resources, on the nature, and producing a lot of waste. So if we can really minimize the resource consumption and the waste equally, then we can achieve the high level of the GDP, and that is possible through green public procurement when we address the life cycle of the products and services within the GPP. And also in this region, we have a huge middle income and also the economic growth. And that is, again, gives us a lot of good, I think, ways to look on the green public procurement. As I say, the food sector, the electronic sector, mobility sector, everything, the consumption is increasing rapidly in the region. And even in the COVID, we saw a lot of like home deliveries and so on. So that's where we have to see how the government can really put in place the standards and so on through green public procurement to really address the negative impacts of the consumption, but also to bring the positive impacts, including the green jobs and so on. So when we are talking about the different countries' experiences, and as we saw, the Indonesia has made quite a lot, and Pakadi, like who is, I would say, the champion for us in Indonesia, that Indonesia has developed their laws and regulations since 2009. And they have steadily progressed quite well. And they have established quite a bit of a green public procurement in their normal procurement systems. And then also they have established quite a bit of the eco labels within the Indonesia. And that is also the very important way that how the bidders can provide the goods with the eco labels to be eligible for the green public procurement. And that's where they have a type 1 eco labels, type 2 eco labels, and type 3, and where we have quite a bit of the standards and so on under different ISOs. So I think this is quite a good learning from Indonesia about their journey on the laws as well as on the environmental labeling and standards. And as they highlight some of the challenges, which again are quite common challenges with many other countries, that they're still looking on the debate of the competitive advantages because of the bidders or the market readiness is not yet there and so on, or this like overseas trade and so forth is requiring different labels and so on, standards. So that's where we have to see. But more important is really to bring the awareness on the green public procurement, as I say, even to the community and so on. So the journey of Indonesia is quite good since 2016 to 20. That's 30 products there, 25 ministries already there, and this is quite a good learning from Indonesia. And then we go to the Malaysia. So again, if we look on the Malaysia journey, that is also quite robust journey, as they are more looking into the different sectors as well, including the energy, including carbon footprints and so on. So that's quite a little bit different from Indonesia, but quite a good journey in different like efficiency systems and so on. So again, Malaysia took advantage of this to promote their SME, small and medium enterprise development, that how the local markets can be developed. And so we have quite a bit of still the issues and challenges in Malaysia as well, as we saw that the focus is always that green products and services are higher in the cost because they do not internalize the externalities. And that is where I think most of the work will be for us to help how they can internalize the externalities to create a level playing field for all the products and services. And now we move to the Philippines. And again, Philippines has a very long journey since 2003 in that, and also Philippines was one of the leaders in the public-private partnerships and so on for the infrastructure and so forth. So you can align these like different phases or different processes within the Philippines to learn a lot, that how the water sector got privatized, like in Manila, for example, how the independent power plant, and how this green public procurement can really push that big like investments and so on in Philippines. That's quite a good learning. And then again, here the eco labels, they have been working quite intensively as a type 1, type 2 and type 3, as I discussed for the Indonesia case as well. So the results so far are quite robust, and as we see, there's quite good results to see the Philippines journey, and that's quite useful for other countries also in ASEAN region to learn. The challenges, again, more or less same: GPP awareness, full compliance to the green criteria, market readiness, employee turnover. And so this is the more or less similar challenges. So that's where we can really build the leapfrogging much easier. So finally, our this journey from 2005 to the 2018 in Thailand. This is our last country in focus, and Thailand again started since 2005, but they have established quite well, and though a bit differently, through the mainly pollution control department under the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources in lead, and supported by the different ministries as well as the international bodies, including also the GIZ and so on. So this is quite a different journey that EU, also the EU-funded Switch Asia supported them a lot, and including on the eco labels. So this green label criteria or the eco labels, they were established quite well in Thailand, thanks to the Switch Asia's last phase as well for that one. So basically here the focus was more on the incentives mechanisms in Thailand. And that's where they try to learn from different countries how to create the incentives, economic incentives, regulatory incentives, and including the reputational incentives. And that's a little bit of a difference that we learn from Thailand case. And then this slide shows that how the different agencies, as I mentioned, they are working together. within the Ministry of Natural Environment and Natural Resources, but also Ministry of Industry and so on. So depending on the sectors and so forth, there are different ministries, and that's very important to see how they work together. So finally, based on this, our learning is that how we support the policy development and enhancement. This is very, very important, including the awareness raising, including the political will, including creating the understanding of internalizing the externalities, so to have a fair playing field. Then support the establishment of policy implementation. So many places the policies are intact, but then implementation takes a bit of time because of the technical capacity, the financial capacity, and so on. So how the training, how the market readiness and other factors can really play a very important role for the implementation of the policy. And so that's where we are trying to support many countries on the policy implementation. But more important, how really you optimize the outcomes. That is what we saw from different countries, the different paths. So I would suggest that we all, like 4 countries, make a good report to see how we can make a bigger impact, whether it be the climate change, whether it be the nature and biodiversity, whether it be the pollution and chemical action. So these 3 planetary crises, or in terms of the SDGs and so on, how we can optimize our outcome, our impact from the GPP, and then we can have a little bit of improvement backward in the policy implementation or the policy development and the enabling environment, including that capacity building, market readiness, and so on. So thank you very much, and looking forward to any questions, even by email later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mushtaq. Always enjoy your presentation. I learned a lot from it. Okay. What I learned today very quickly is that he has shared with us his very clear concept on the SPP, GPP, and the benefits that he has explained to us. Secondly, he gave us example of the GBP in Japan and in Copenhagen. That's very, very interesting. And then he go down to 4 countries in ASEAN, and we have Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. And last but not least, I like the last slide, Dr. Mushtaq, about leapfrogging. This is something that I think they contain very insight information from, I think, that what he has shared with us. So with that, I would like to thank you, Mushtaq, for sharing his lesson learned. Before I go to the next speaker, we would like participants to kindly complete evaluation form that we already sent to the link. So if you have time, and please kindly complete the evaluation form for us. Next, I would like to invite the next speaker, last but not least, to share the lesson learned from EU Switch Asia SPP projects. May I invite Dr. Lanchakon Patum Ratana, Dr. Ann. She is a project manager, Switch Asia SCP facilities. Dr. Lanchakon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Chayot, for a kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Today, I'll be talking to you about our lesson learned from EU Switch Asia SPP projects. Next slide, please. I have divided my talk into 3 parts. First, I will present, and is my slide come? So here is the overview of the technical. We support SPP in the form of technical assistance, the grant projects. Okay, and here are the list of the technical assistance that SPP facility has been supporting. First is with the Indonesia, that we support the development of market readiness analysis for the green sustainable photocopy paper and wooden furniture in Indonesia. And for India, we also support the development of the sustainable public procurement action plan for Indian Railways, where we deliver the policy analysis scoping study, SPP action plan with the implementation guide for Indian Railways. And also for Mongolia, we support SPP as one part of the big project relating to the SCP implementation in Mongolia. In case of the SPP, we support the revision and the updating of the SPP action plan and develop the SPP criteria for 3 selected product groups and capacity building for the government and SMEs. And for Thailand, you already heard from Dr. Thamdongrat that we support on the previous phase already complete, and we are doing an ongoing support on the development of vendor list registration system. And now let's move on to the grant program, which implemented since 2008 until present. Here there were 2 projects that the subject is directly to the green procurement. First is in Bhutan. The project is a scaling up public demand for sustainable production in Bhutan. And in that project, Switch Asia support establishing the legal and institutional GPP setting, develop the GPP guidance materials, provide training programs for SME and suppliers, and design and facilitate the GPP trainings for public procurers, and develop knowledge platform and the curricula on the GPP. And also the other completed grant project, one was in China. It was the kind of adaptation and use of SPP standard in municipal public procurement center in the 3 cities in China to mainstream their application. And the other grant projects that SPP or GPP is like one of the elements in their project. First was in India. It's just finished, I think. The project name is Switching India's Consumption to Fair and Sustainable Goods. They develop kind of network and active ecosystem to institutions and partners, including government agencies who promote sustainable consumption and production in India. And the other 2 projects, the other 3 projects are focusing on the tourism sector. For the project of the country in Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan, called the Model for Sustainable Tourism in Central Asia. They also promote sustainable tourism in the 3 countries through the implementation of relating ISO standards related to green procurement and eco-labeling. And also in Kazakhstan, they contribute to resource efficiency in the tourism accommodation sector and support the implementation of the sustainability certification system. And also the same similar for Laos, that the Lao tourism supply chain is like, it's one of that objective that the tourism supply chain is more sustainable by adoption of the Travel Life Certified SCP practice among the tourism. Regarding this, because this certificate has GPP as one of the requirements in order to certify this certification. Yeah. And we also have 2 projects in Thailand as a grant project. One is the consumer and retailer driving sustainable food market in Thailand. Their activity is like supporting the green procurement of retailers on food products, including seafood, banana, and chicken chains. The other one was a completed one, which was the greening supply chain in the Thai auto and automotive part industry. In this project, they also promoted green public procurement to development of GPP criteria for automotive parts. And for in Myanmar, it was Smart Myanmar, which implementation is in the textile sector, but they also have a kind of initiating the public-private dialogues on the sustainable public procurement. And for Bangladesh, focusing on the sustainable buildings, they also engage with the policymakers to promote and regulate green construction and also green public procurement for building materials. In India, also there were a project related to agribusiness that the sustainable procurement of the certified organic products in the retailers are like support. And another regional project in Vietnam, Cambodia, and PDR also completed one. It's the sustainable product innovation in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, which they conduct their activity, also do branding, marketing, skill training for the SME marketing via fair product catalogs, and also promote sustainable public policy and procurement with the organizations. And before SCP facility here, Swiss Asia also supported the Philippines during 2014 to 2017 in the development of the Philippines Green Public Procurement Roadmap. That one was supported by Swiss Asia Policy Support Component. So the key observation that from our experience, the GPP or SPP is one of the key areas that SCP that Swiss Asia has supported for political and practical levels. And at the political levels, of course, we support, the supports are to the development of the policy, and the practical level support are through the integration of the project activity marketing tools to promote the green or sustainable products or the service that developed by the projects. And green procurement actually is not limited to only the government level, but it reaches out to various sectors, especially in the private sector. I observed that in countries where GPP policy have been promoted, the private sector has learned the principle and also has adapted to their business, which means there is a potential for enhancing of the more procurable products or materials or service categories. So this shows the clear link between the political and practical level. I would like to give an example of case of Thailand, that we first developed the policy and then we have a continuous phase for developing try to implement it by develop a supporting tool like National Green Directory, which is receive interest from the trade sector as well. And above all of what I mentioned, I think momentum is very important, because a plan without action is nothing, no matter how sophisticated action plan that you have. But it's important to start prioritization then and get the work that we already committed, get it done. And saying about the capacity buildings, it should be conducted regularly. And we all know that procurers change over time. So we can, it would be good if we can have a tailor-made e-learning course for a specific audience. So this would save costs and as a solution for this type of problem, and provide more dynamic platform to exchange experience, can be the technical advice or discussion and the market engagement is still the key that enables demand and supply side to create impactful SPP practice in countries, which clear and consistent communication is essential to encourage long-term long-term engagement with actors in the market. And finally, I remember someone say that SCP is the missing link of the sustainable consumption and production, and I would like to say that green procurement or sustainable public procurement is also the important link to achieving sustainable consumption and production. And that's all of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lanchukon, Dr. Ann, for your sharing very interesting information from Swiss Asia SCP facility perspective. You had mentioned very key word for me to learn that how to make it the GPP into implementation more and at a local level. So they have several grants projects since 2008 to help many countries to do sector, maybe textile, tourism. But you also mentioned in the last slide, I think very important is that implementation is very important, timing, and also you talk about capacity building and also market enhancement. So these are the key issues that if we would like to make a GPP more successful, then we have to go to implementation and try to localize and make it. Thank you very much for sharing very interesting information with us. Okay, then since we are a little bit behind schedule, I would like to next to invite Dr. Mushtaq Memon to conclude and make closing remark. Dr. Mushtaq, the floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you. So first of all, big thanks to Dr. Chayot for a marathon session, and Professor Thamrat, and my friend Pakadi and Dr. Ann. So as we saw quite learning, I mean, if you start, I would say collecting all the slides, all the learning is a huge. So the whole point now comes how we can take advantage of this huge learning, whether it be learning on the policies, learning on the market readiness, learning even on the challenges, learning on the eco levels, you name it, or different sectors, and so on, the processes. So this is where I think the real deal is, that how you bring all this learning in a focus to assess where we stand today in each country and how we can jump to the next level without repeating the mistakes which other countries might have done. So I think in this way, the best way is that to work in a group, partnership. Partnership is the key. And that's where, again, like a big thanks to the EU for the Switch Asia, which is basically also creating the partnerships. So as we can partner with, let's say, even the faces on the screen, like Pakadi, Professor Thamrat, Dr. Chayot, Dr. Ann, if we partner like those different departments, entities, and so on, I think we can make quite a good leapfrog in this area. So at that note, as tomorrow we are starting a comprehensive training, so I would like to request you to please get tomorrow, so we have more of a capacity building on each area in also different sectors you may learn. But this is partnerships. Let's keep this alive, dynamic, and so we can all leapfrog in green public procurement or sustainable public procurement. So again, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your great support, work, help, and big thanks to the EU for their generous support. Thank you. Back to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Before closing, I have a request from Kun Pirapon that we would like to have a group photo. Group photo, then we need to come to the same room. We will send you the Joy as panelist, and if you see that, please click it. Then we move everybody to the same room, and please secondly, open your camera, then we have a team here to take a photo of participant. If that's okay, please. Did you set it out already? Could be upon. Okay. Thank you, Mushtaq. So we have a group photo. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Next. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Mọi nha. 1, 2, 3.หมดยังครับ 1, 2, 3. หมดไหม Thank you very much everybody สวัสดีครับ from Thailand. Thank you คุณแอนนา
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye ปัก
See
กิ
you
โม
tomorrow.
สวัสดีครับ
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay safe and healthy. See you next.
See you again.
See you with Dr. Shabir tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.